Hey, welcome back to another episode of the She's Making an Impact podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ngom. Today, we're talking with Carrie Flynn. She's a growth marketing consultant who helps service-based professionals scale their businesses using strategic and sustainable growth strategies and planning. So we talk about how she, built this business to six figures while she was still working full time. And then we talk about what she does as a fractional CMO and what those sustainable growth strategies really look like. So we have a lot of fun in this episode. Before we dive in though, if you have not yet left a review of the show, please go do that. So that helps us just reach more people, make a greater impact. And as you leave your review, before you hit submit, take a screenshot of it and then email your screenshot of that review to clientcare@rachelngom.com. And I will send you a little gift as a way to say thank you. All right, let's dive in. Hey, Carrie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me, my dear. How are you?
Amazing. So let's jump in. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Well, I'm Carrie. I live in Florida. I live in Mount Dora, and I actually am a fractional CMO and growth marketing consultant. So I work with female-owned professional service businesses, and we help them to scale their businesses using sustainable growth strategies. It's a lot of fun.
Ooh, okay. How'd you get into that?
Oh, well, I started as a public school teacher. I was a public school teacher for 15 years. And when my youngest daughter was probably 6 months old, maybe, I started my business in 2017. I started as a virtual assistant and just got involved with clients who were in that space and was working more on the operations side, was an integrator and a launch manager for quite a while, and loved the strategy and thought partnership that you get with marketing. And so I took all those skills and sort of like slowly moved over to that side within the last couple of years. So now I get to oversee marketing for clients, or I partner with them to like help, consult with them and their teams, which is a lot. I really enjoy that.
Yeah. So how did you build this business while you were still working full time? What did that look like?
Very organized. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
I actually was a teacher for the first, really until 2021. When we moved, I used to live, I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I grew up. And we moved to where I live now in 2021. And that's when I quit teaching, was in the summer of 2021. So probably 4 years of my business was being built while I was teaching either full-time or part-time. And so I was pretty organized around doing it nights. It was very part-time for a while. Like I really went all in on it probably during COVID. Honestly, was when it really became a full-time endeavor, and I went part-time teaching. And so nighttime, I really worked 1 or 2 hours a night. I was very boundaried and disciplined, and I didn't let it overtake my life, which was really important. And so that helped me. It actually was a lot. Funny enough, when I did finally leave and became a full-time business owner, I had a hard time managing my time because I was so structured and orderly and had all of this boundary. I knew when I could and couldn't work. It was a lot harder for me to navigate.
Isn't that funny? Now
it
you
was
have all
so
the
I
time
did not
in the world.
I did not expect that. It was very surprising, but now I'm much better. I have a good plan going now, but it took me a while to get self-disciplined with that schedule. It was weird.
So you only have 1 to 2 hours a night. What are some of the key things that you were focused on in that time?
I focus a lot on two things. Relationship marketing was a huge part of how I built my business and how I continue to do so, because I work mostly in service. I don't have a lot of digital offers where you might use different other marketing strategies. So I do a lot of relationship marketing and networking and connecting, as well as organic social media. So there was that. And then the other side of it is providing excellent, client delivery. That was another piece, because a lot of the great, wonderful people I've worked with have come through relationships I've had. So, I really believe in loving the people you are already working with more than putting your energy towards your potential clients. So that was really important to me too. So most of my time was spent in those two areas, I would say.
Yeah. What does that look like specifically in terms of like relationship building?
First and foremost, it looks a little different than it did then, but now it looks a lot like kind of managing some in-person events. So I go to a lot of local connective opportunities. So I will go to like my Chamber of Commerce, looking at more traditional methods to connect with people in person, like networking groups, lunches. But it also looks like just being a part of like really great digital groups as well. Like it could be a paid mastermind, it could be a coaching program, things like that. Those are some great places to connect with people and just open your potential relationship doors to spaces where you may not have other connections. And then just honestly, just being a decent friend, a good person, like connecting with people I've worked with in the past, like just being a good follow-upper with no, it's strategic, but there's no agenda, just like checking in with past clients, like, re-engaging with past people I worked with on teams I used to work with, just kind of connecting and keeping those lines together has had a big impact. So I do spend at least an hour or two a week doing that. Voxers are great. If you're
Voxer
wondering
is
how
awesome.
to do this, Voxer's a great way to do that. If you've already established a communication, you can just search. It's just,
tell us what Voxer is for people that have not been converted.
So Voxer is kind of like a mix between texting and like voice memos. So if you have like, it's like taking like DMs and Instagram, but like expanding it, because you can do a little bit longer voice memos than you could in some of the social media channels. So if you like to process in text, but you also like the option to process verbally, it like marries the two of those. And you also don't have to give your personal phone number out, which is really nice. So it's like kind of protects your privacy a little bit, which I really like.
The thing that I love is that I get to speed people up. And so
you can,
I'll be listening to people on like 3x speed.
My friend does 4x. I'm like, how do you know what they're saying? It's literally skipping.
3x is my max usually.
I do it does transcribing as well. So if you're like me and you might be a little busy, but you want to at least get a sense of what the voice memo is about before you listen to it, you can do the paid version and transcribe. So like all of my clients and I do strategic conversations back and forth in there. And so I can kind of get a sense of what it's about before I like go and listen to an 8-minute Voxer, which sometimes they are 8 minutes.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So back to when you're working 2 hours every night, you said boundaries were really important. What are some of the boundaries that you had in place? What did that look like?
So I was really careful to not overwork. I'm a big like achievement oriented person. I think responsibility is my top strength on the strength finder. So it's really easy for me to get like wrapped up in work because I like what I do. So I was really clear and strategic about not just spending every hour I had outside of teaching working, because I had 2 children. They were younger at the time. My husband traveled for work, still does for his job. And so I tried to be strategic around working when he was gone more than when he was home. And maybe 1 to 2 hours. So pretty boundaried around like, I wasn't going to work past like, 9:00 at night, probably. So when my youngest would go to bed till probably 9:30, I would work. And then the rest of that time was for me. I still really prioritize like decompressing time, because that's mentally very important. And the other thing I did was I didn't work all weekends. That's a misnomer that sometimes that's required. I keep in mind, I worked with clients who launched. Sometimes that is a necessity, but it's not an ongoing thing. So I was pretty clear about putting like family time, putting whatever on the docket. So I wasn't working full time, and I didn't respond to messages like from clients like weird times. So even though I was working late, I was really boundaried around like scheduling messages, making sure I wasn't sending things out super late because they may still be working regular hours. And it's just important to be, for me to like set a tone of what the expectations are. And I was very open about where I was at. So if people asked, they knew this is when I would be focused working these times.
Yeah. I think that's really important just to set that expectation up front. Because if people don't know, then they're expecting like immediate response and then they get pissed and then it's like a whole thing.
That's a learning curve that if you work in any service business, that's a process you have to go through. I certainly went through that And you still have to unlearn that. Even where I'm at now, it's still a process. Like you're constantly refining your boundaries around like response times, et cetera, and so forth. So that certainly comes up still.
Yeah. So for those of us who don't know, what is a fractional CMO?
So that's a great question. It's kind of like, it looks a little different depending on like from the corporate space to what I would look at the small business space. So the corporate space is more like a C-suite, like VP person type. But in like the small business space, it's really essentially somebody who's overseeing the marketing of somebody's business. So I incorporate looking at lots of different kind of categories of somebody's marketing, but I also look at the people involved. I have to help with the vendors that they work with. I oversee any and all projects that are involved in marketing, including launches. So I'm the one kind of taking that mental load off of the CEO, and I'm partnering and helping them. So they are not doing it all by themselves anymore. It allows the client to kind of step into more of a visionary role, which is really lovely for them. It's great for an established business owner. So if you are close to 7 figures, you're inching there, or you're already there and you're scaling to multi-7, then that's where the pain point for that would typically arise.
Got it.
Not necessary to invest in a CMO when you're still like inching towards maybe multi-6 figures. You don't need it then.
Okay. So it's more so when you hit 7 figures, multiple 7 figures, then
I have a client now who's not to 7, and you can potentially do it then. Like I would say if that's a goal for you for that year, that would be appropriate to start that process, maybe working in consulting first and then going to CMO. It's a great transition.
Okay, cool. So you talked about creating sustainable growth strategies. What are some of those strategies? What does that look like?
Yeah. So a lot of clients, when they are probably at 500,000 and going to 7 figures, there can sometimes be this like dark night of the soul period, as one of my old coaches used to say, where what had worked for you before maybe was causing you to then plateau. And sometimes that is caused by utilizing more, I'm going to say cookie cutter strategies, or just strategies that maybe you get from like friends in a mastermind, or just a framework that worked for somebody else. And so when I come into somebody's business, I'm trying to help them create something that feels really sustainable, which means that they can like use it for, give them a little bit more time in their life, and not just something that's like a fire. Like we're just like, like that's not necessarily like my MO. I'm sort of like I'm trying to get them to grow in a really sustainable way, because it's really difficult to manage like significantly fast growth over longer periods of time. Not only will you potentially burn out as a business owner, but you can also have some issues with operations, like being able to withhold the growth, which is a little difficult. So we come in and look at their strategies and see what they're currently doing, and help them to really focus on something specific for like 90 days. That's going to help them see some smaller, but moving forward growth. And we sort of build over time. That's one thing I look at. The other piece I look at is systems that they have in their marketing to help them really get it in a flow, so that they're not like constantly running around with like a chicken with their head cut off type of a deal.
Yeah.
I have had some clients who have managed to get to 7 figures with like no real SOPs in their marketing, like no real. I'm like, how did you do this all by yourself? Like, it's amazing, but that happens. And so that's another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
And then the third part is the actual sustainability part, where we look at like, how can we get you to a place where you're only doing these things? Do we need to delegate? Do we need to bring on other people to help with some of these tasks that you're currently doing? Just kind of looking at their time, looking at their energy. What does their long-term success look like? And so we sort of look at all 3 of those little areas to help build a unique to them like plan that we work on for 90 days. And then we continue to build from there.
What would an example of a 90-day plan be?
So we look at a couple things. So we start with their actual goals they want to achieve for that quarter. So that can be a revenue goal. Sometimes it will be a goal that they want to hit if they're launching something. So we sort of look at an overall just bigger picture goal that they're hoping to accomplish. And we really try to determine like, why is it that they want that? We get very specific. And we try to be really focused. So I don't want them picking like 28 goals. Like that's not doable in 90 days. So we really try to stick to less than 3, like pick a couple. And then we really break it down by growth opportunities and then strategic initiatives. So I actually look for some of the best opportunities for them and their business that they can see some ways to meet those goals. So if it's, I would like to have a 50% growth in X, like what are some opportunities that are arising in different areas that we can use to then get there? And then strategic initiatives are the specific things we have to do to get them. And then I break it down for them by month and week. So we really get super detailed and like planned about exactly what we're going to do. So there's no like, we're not sitting on a call wondering what we're going to talk about, every week. Like we have a clear roadmap of what to expect. And then we can kind of tweak it as we're going through it, which is very nice for them. So they know what to expect. And the team knows what to expect, what we're working on, more importantly, because there's a lot of people sometimes involved that have to do the tactical and practical parts, but there's no guesswork. And if something isn't working, we can often go back to that and go, all right, next time we're going to tweak this a little bit. And that just helps us to kind of reflect, which is lovely every 90 days.
Okay. What are some of the systems that you have set in place?
Some of the big ones that they may not have is a lot of it centers in the marketing around content flows and creation. Sometimes there's a lot of like throwing spaghetti at the wall. There may not be a real clear plan. It's really 2 areas that I've noticed recently. The first is long form and short form content, kind of being able to figure out how to navigate that in a really kind of expectational way. So we've built a lot of templates in Asana, or you can use them in ClickUp or whatever, but just knowing exactly what the processes are and who's going to be involved, because sometimes I love my clients, but sometimes they don't know like who's doing what and when, and like what's the checklist, and then little things get missed when you have maybe blog posts going out or YouTube, et cetera. So we have a lot of those kind of workflows that we put together. That's a big piece. The other is just them timing their own calendars is something that comes up for them a lot, which I know isn't exactly marketing, but it does relate to like creation of things for them. And that's been a little bit of a pain point, is trying to help them find, like clear their calendars a little bit to make space for creation of things. And so a big picture marketing calendar will come up quite a bit in terms of how to look at the big overview of this month. Where can I fit some time in to create? And it helps a ton to know what's coming so that they can fit that in.
Cool. For, let's say we're at 6 figures, wanting to grow to multiple 6 figures, what are some of the core growth strategies that we should implement right away?
Oh my gosh. Well, number one, like don't rely on one thing of marketing. Like don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's a big one. There's 4 different buckets of marketing, and they're all amazing, and you can begin to like explore them. So if you're in service, like I am, I highly recommend that you look at relationship marketing as kind of your number one, like put that at the lead for you. And just start building relationships. If you're more in the digital marketing space, like you can look at some of those longer form contents, like start now. The ROI on longer form content, it takes a while to get it going, but it's a slow burn, but man, it like lasts. The sustainability of it is much longer than maybe like your organic social media or even your paid traffic, which is more like it's a dopamine, like that kind of stuff. So I highly recommend like exploring some different types of like content creation, like what's going to give you the biggest return on investment for you. Like just because people are doing TikToks does not mean you need to do that necessarily. Like know what's going to give you the ROI and where are your people at? Like, where are they at? Like knowing your audience and your people. Like if you know your people are on LinkedIn, you don't need to be hanging out on Instagram every other minute.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You don't have to be doing everything the same as somebody else. The sooner you get to the unique part about your business, the less stressful and complicated and like feeling like you're throwing spaghetti at the wall will be. So that's number one. I would just like do the work around knowing your people and where they're hanging out.
What
like
would you
go
say to
there.
someone that's at 7 figures wanting to go to multiple?
Ooh, that's a whole different
Yeah,
conversation.
exactly.
I would say one of the things that they struggle with that I have seen that comes up a lot. Now, this may not be the case for everybody, but the number one is that they are all experiencing I do not want to see this insert thing by myself anymore. Like they are recognizing that they sometimes are the roadblock to growth. And so they sometimes need support to be able to step out of that. That is a control thing that is really hard when you've built a baby. Like that's your baby. And when they are building that and they're ready to go and for many, 7 figures was the dream. And then they've hit that. And now they're like, now what?
Now what?
And then they get to a place where they know they can't be the person to like do the things. They can't oversee it by themselves. And that is like, it sounds like it would be a lot easier, but it's very mindset wise, very difficult sometimes for them to do that. And it is a process. And so when I'm sitting with them, it's going, okay, what only you can do? Like, we're going to make a list. And that's where that, like the last piece of my framework, that sustainability piece, where we're having to look at their tasks, their time. What does success really look like for you? Like, what are your goals for the long term? Like, that is a conversation in our strategy goals. So it's a lot less about, they know their ideal client. They have their strategies typically nailed. They often have a lot of content going. And so they might need some system support, but they really need help with somebody coming in to like free their brain space up and supporting. So we have a lot of conversations around what that can look like.
Yeah.
And so that's where I end up coming in and like kind of gently pushing them towards that, because I can't push them off a cliff. They'll freak out.
The brain space, that one's important, because as you grow, you start to realize like your decision-making skills become really important. And if it's like a small decision, I'm like, don't put that on me. Like somebody else needs to be responsible for making that decision, because I need to make the higher level one. Yeah.
It's hard if you're the more detail oriented you are, the harder it is. Like it's still hard even if you're not. Like it's a mental load that they carry that they don't even realize that they're a roadblock to growth, because they're just trying to keep moving forward. Like it's just, you're just doing the same stuff, and it's very difficult for them. But once they decide and they know, then it becomes like, okay, let's take the next 12 months and let's get this, because it takes that long to get from I'm ready to, okay, now we have a plan in place that's working.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what does it mean to make an impact?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question, because I was just thinking about that earlier. Like, what does that even mean? So for me, it's kind of, there's a personal answer to that. So I have 2 daughters. So for me, the biggest answer is that I show my kids what's possible, that you don't have to, because I ended up in teaching that because I loved it. So it was like, you don't have to end up in something and stay there just because it's safe and reliable. Funny story, it didn't end up being that safe and reliable at the end, but
right? Isn't that interesting?
Funny story, but when I started, it was very safe and reliable. And so that you don't have to, if you get into something, it's not quite right. It's okay if you need to make a pivot. And it's okay to explore some things just to see if it's the right thing for you. So I'm trying to like lead the way for my daughters in terms of both of them, they're 14 and 6. So like showing them as a woman what's possible. Even if you have children, even if you can decide what that success looks like for you and do it on your terms, which I totally did. I didn't really follow a prescriptive path that a lot of other people did. I did it because it worked for me. So that's probably the biggest way that I make an impact. And then in terms of business, like it's really important for me to show women, particularly who have businesses, that you can make a lot of money and still have a significant amount of time spent on taking care of yourself. You don't have to sacrifice your own sanity for your business. It's not necessary. And I think that's kind of difficult when women get to a certain place in business. They feel like they've sort of lost their vision and their why they're doing it. And So I really love working with women when they're at that place and they want to expand it, but they're just afraid of what that would mean.
Yeah.
Showing them that it's possible.
I love it. What's one of the best books you've read?
Recently, one of my favorites is Gay Hendricks, what is it called?
The Big Leap.
The Big Leap. That's one of my favorites. It's a go-to.
That might be one of the most referenced book on this show when I asked this
in
question.
terms of mindset, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
In terms of operations and habitual atomic habits, the one that I have read recently that I really liked is The Psychology of Money or The Psychology of Wealth. I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up.
Psychology of Money.
Psychology of Money. It's really excellent. Just overall, like money. If you struggle with money mindset issues, or if just like understanding money in general, which is really important in our space, it's a great book. And I specifically do audibles. So all three of these are good on Audible as well as written.
Good to know, because sometimes you buy the Audible and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't listen.
I know.
To this
No,
person.
if I turn it on, it's bad. I'm like, no. Like, so I am a good reference point for audibles because that's all I can do right now. I don't have time.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally get that. Where can we connect with you?
The best place is honestly if you want to go learn more about what we do, our website's great. It's virtualsimplicity.co because my business is Virtual Simplicity. But I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So LinkedIn's great. You can just search my name, Carrie Flynn. It shows right up there, or Facebook. Those are great places to find me online if you're just wanting to hang out and like chat and connect in the DMs and stuff.
Awesome. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome.